Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of The Perception Diet, and today I want to talk to you about this trap of the spiritual ego and how not to get caught in the trap of the spiritual ego. Alright, so before we get started, to get us started, what is the ego? Okay, so the simplest and most, I think, complete explanation for the ego at large, so just generally speaking, what are we talking about when we talk about the ego? The ego is the part of you, the part of the human, the part of us that believes in separation. Okay? So it is the part of you that believes that it is separate from all that is, from everyone else, from everything. Which we need to understand that fundamentally the ego is an illusion. Because to separate something out from everything is impossible, right? Because if we're saying everything and then we're separating something outside of it, there's nowhere for it to go, right? If we're talking about the everything, there's nothing outside of everything, okay? So basically what's happened is human beings for a long time have been living under this illusion that we are separate from everything, from each other, from nature, from life at large, okay? And this separation causes duality, and this duality causes pain, okay? So because of this separation, we then start to get into this belief system that we can be in a situation where we don't have enough, right? Where we're not going to have our needs met, where we're not going to have enough love, we're not going to have enough resources, we're not going to have enough of whatever it is that we think that we need in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to be happy. And this causes fear, and this causes, anxiety and all of these things. And it also causes us to believe that we could have a situation that could be bad versus a situation that could be good, and we don't want the bad situation and we do want the good situation, right? So we go about starting to try to manipulate ourselves and manipulate our environment so that we can get what we want and avoid what we don't want, and so that we can feel like we're going to have our needs met and we're not going to not have our needs met, right? And again, this all comes from the grand illusion that there is separation. Right? So when we're talking about like losing the ego or dissolving the ego, so this doesn't mean you get rid of your personality. This doesn't mean you get rid of your individuality. This doesn't mean that you become this kind of like blob of nothingness, right? That's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about losing the ego, what we really mean is that you lose the illusion that there is something separating you out from the all. Which means if you're completely connected to the all, there is only abundance. There is only whatever's happening, and whatever's happening is supposed to be happening. That there is no other option, right? So there can't be bad or good things, there just is, right? There can't be a lack of abundance because you are connected to everything. Meaning you have access to everything, which means there is no lack of love because you are, in a sense, completely connected to all of love. There is no lack of resources because you are fully and completely connected to all of those resources. You see what I'm saying? And this is the bottom line, is that that's already the truth. You are already connected to all the love that exists. You are already connected to all the resources you will ever need. You are already fully and completely at one with everyone and everything. But because of the ego, you believe there is a separation. And then because of that, you live that, right? Because of your belief in this separation, you experience that separation. That's how the mind works, right? Our mind is constantly projecting out into this mirror reality what we believe, and the mirror reality is just reflecting it back to us. This is why we all have such different experiences of reality, because we are all operating from different belief systems. And then again, so to truly become one who has released the ego, in that you have integrated that part of yourself that believed it was separate back into the awareness of oneness, right? Simply means that, yeah, you lose fear, you lose anxiety, you lose competition, you lose a lot of these kind of negative character associations because they no longer fit into your worldview, right? And it's not a belief anymore, you just start to experience the oneness, all right? So now, because of this ego, right? This is kind of why the world is the crazy way that it is, right? Because we believe in separation, we therefore believe in competition. We therefore believe that there could be a lack of love, and therefore we need to do things in order to procure that love, right? So we need to look good, we need to have the nice car, we need to have the good job, we need to have money, we need to have good friends, we gotta have all this stuff because we think that's gonna get us love. We think that's gonna get us value. We think that's gonna get us validation, right? Which we believe we are separate from and therefore must acquire. You see what I'm saying? And then we do things like we compete with each other, and we believe that if I have some, or if they have some, I'm going to have less, so we get jealous, and it causes all of these negative emotions and these negative kind of experiences, right? Where we're constantly trying to manipulate ourselves and manipulate reality, right? To try and get away from what we don't want and try to have what we do want. To try to experience the abundance, the joy, the bliss, the happiness we think we want, and we're trying to run away from all of the negative things that we think that we don't want, but because it's all born out of this false perception that there is separation, it always causes us pain, right? So as long as we're operating out of the ego, it's going to cause us pain, because we're still operating from the fundamental understanding that there is separation, that bad things can happen, that you cannot have what you need, right? That's what the ego does. It says there's separation, bad things can happen, and I could be in a situation where I'm not going to get what I need, and therefore I need to manipulate my reality and manipulate myself in order to ensure that these bad things don't happen and that I get what I need, right? And that always causes pain. And so that is kind of what the regular world looks like, right? We're in competition with each other, or we have the kind of like loud and proud ego, which is like those people who are aggressive and competition and dog eat dog and fight for your rights and da 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 da. And then we have the insecure ego, the inferior ego, right? Which is all the depression, the anxiety, the I'm not good enough, the I'm jealous of everybody, the I constantly am feeling like I'm a piece of shit, right? And these are basically just two sides of the same coin, right? Same thing. You believe you are separated out from the all, you believe you are separated out from the divine, and therefore you can be not good enough, you can be lacking, you cannot have what you need, you cannot have what you think you need to have. You see what I'm saying? This can be material, this can be mental emotional, this can be spiritual, this can be anything, right? But the inferior ego is the inferior ego. It's simply the ego that says, I don't have what I need, I don't have what is required of me, right? And it's the same thing, right? So like, I'm not funny enough is the same thing as I don't have enough money. I'm not pretty enough is the same thing as I'm not smart enough. It's all the same thing, right? It's that belief in lack, right? So we all pretty much know what that is in the regular world, right? So then we start to enter spirituality, and we think, okay, I'm going to transcend my ego by becoming a spiritual person, and I'm gonna do yoga, and I'm gonna meditate, and I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna travel to all these spiritual countries, and I'm gonna listen to all these spiritual teachers, and I'm gonna read all these spiritual books. And then we start to develop a spiritual ego without knowing that that's what we're doing. Okay? So we simply transfer this I'm not enough and this I don't want bad things to happen to me from the material world, and we transplant it to the spiritual world, right? So now all of a sudden, secretly, maybe we're not aware of this, but we are We are monitoring our thoughts, we're monitoring our behavior, we're thinking, what would a spiritual person do? We're trying to be forgiving, we're trying to be kind, we're trying to be loving, we're trying to do what Jesus would do, we're trying to do what the spiritual teacher tells us to do. We're constantly in our head, worrying about if we're attracting bad things or because again, all we've done is shifted from trying to manipulate our physical reality, right? Money, cars, sex, your body, blah, 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 to get what you want and to avoid bad things. And you're doing it now in your spiritual life, right? So you're still coming from a fundamental understanding that you are lacking something. And you bring that to all of your spiritual practices, and then you're not actually any different than what everyone else in the normal society is doing, right? Because the intention behind your spirituality is the same, is that you're trying to earn something, right, that you think that you don't have, and you're trying to earn favor so that bad things won't happen to you, right? And so this is a trap, and it makes spirituality really complicated and convoluted, and you're going to constantly feel like you're failing, and you're going to constantly feel like you're not doing the right thing or the good enough thing, and you're going to constantly be seeking, and this teacher's going to let you down, and that teacher's going to let you down, and this thing's going to let you down, and you're going to think that you're doing all the right things, and bad things are still going to happen to you, and you're going to be like, why is this all so confusing? Why is this so hard? Why can't I get myself to be loving? Why can't I get myself to be compassionate? Why can't I get myself to be whatever? And you're constantly going to continue to see lack in yourself, and you're constantly going to continue to see lack in your environment, because it's the same mindset, just in a different category, right? So how do we move beyond this? How do we not just transplant our regular ego into spirituality so that we just have a spiritual ego, right? And again, the spiritual ego can be superior or inferior. The spiritual ego can be like, I'm so great, I practice yoga every day, I meditate every day, look at how awesome I am, look at how compassionate I was, like, I'm so much more spiritual than this other person, and you get a little judgy of other people, and you think, this teacher doesn't really know what they're talking about, that person doesn't really know what they're talking about, I'm better than them, I'm better than them, blah, 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 right? Or we get the inferior spiritual ego, which is constantly praying and scared of your thoughts, and beating yourself up for not being compassionate, beating yourself up for not being nice, beating yourself up for being jealous, beating yourself up for all of these things. I'm never good enough, I'm never good enough, I'm never good enough, right? And again, you can start to see how this is no different than kind of what everyone else in the world is doing. And it's not fun, and it's not freeing, and it's seriously just as convoluted and complicated and unfruitful as trying to earn your value by having a nice car, right? Trying to pray your way into love and good things happening to you is the exact same thing as trying to earn money in your way into trying to have what you need and have bad things not happen to you, right? It's all the same thing. So my point here is, right, rather than making spirituality the new ego game where you try and earn your value and you try and manipulate yourself and your reality into bad things not happening to you and good things only happening to you and getting what you think you need, start to just notice where you're doing what you're doing. Like I say, right? Start to just become aware of where you're doing all of your spiritual practices, even your health practices, whatever practices you have in your life. Start to just notice where you're doing them from a state of lack, right? From the assumption that you don't have what you need, or the world isn't going to give you what you need, or you're not good enough already just as you are, and start to just notice how that feels, right? Start to feel and notice the desperation. Feel and notice the clinginess. Feel and notice how your spiritual practices are becoming a new realm for you to fail in, right? Rather than something that is actually liberating you. Just start to become aware. And then the second thing is spending time in contemplation just with yourself, allowing things to come up, and noticing where you're judging yourself all day long. Okay? So again, noticing where you're doing things out of a state of lack, right? And noticing where you're doing things out of a state of judging yourself all day, right? You're just notice how you're all up in your head telling yourself you're not doing good enough, you're not doing this good enough, or you're judging everyone else all day. They're not spiritual, they're not good, they're not doing all these things that they should be doing, right? And this again is you trying to live by some sort of standard or some sort of rule book, and understanding that true spirituality, when we really get there, right, you will first realize that you didn't get anywhere. You were always this person. There were just things piled on top of you that were delusion that never had anything to do with who you really were. But when you really get there, you don't have to try to be a compassionate person. You don't have to try to be a loving person. You don't have to try to be generous. You don't have to try to be not jealous, da 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 da. You just don't do any of those negative things, and you just naturally are all of those positive things, right? Because you have the fundamental understanding of unity. That's all this is, right? So just starting to become aware of where the separation still exists inside of you. That's all you have to do. That is the only spiritual practice that I think has any merit, is just becoming aware of where you are still operating from a place of separation. And when you notice that, again, bringing it into the light of love, just noticing. Don't judge it. Don't tell yourself you shouldn't. Don't make it a new game where you're constantly like blah, 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 right? You just say, okay, I'm operating from a place of lack here. And you just shine the light of awareness on that. And that's all you have to do, because this is the thing. In the light of awareness, all illusion disappears. In the light of awareness, all illusion disappears. You don't have to do anything more than become fully, consciously aware of the delusion, and it will dissolve. Okay? So practicing. And then again, remembering that judging yourself, constantly trying to get yourself to do all these things, constantly trying to improve yourself and do all the spiritual practices, or judging other people, blah, blah, blah. That is a veil between you and awareness. Okay? So just bring it into the light of awareness. You don't have to do anything about it, because if it's not real, it will dissolve. And if it's not dissolving, you're not quite fully aware of it yet. So you just practice being with what is and not judging. That's it. That's all spirituality actually is starting to bridge the gap between actual reality and what you believe is reality. You see? So just notice where you're acting from a place of separation. Notice where you're acting from a place of judgment. Notice. Just bring it to awareness over and over and over again, and allow these things to start to dissolve. And that's all you have to do. Okay, so if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I love hearing from you. Like, subscribe, find me on Facebook, Perception Trainers, Instagram, Ali_Perception Trainers. Join us on Patreon. I'd love to have you. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video.